So welcome to part 2, where we'll be listening to Sea Wall by Benjamin Wallfisch and Hans Zimmer. It's the final, fullest iteration of the Soul theme. It's got those super hardcore bass slides in there. It's the cue where we are led to believe that Kay may be on his way to kill Deckard, before he makes that final, very human, more human than human sacrifice to kill Love and save Deckard so he can go meet his daughter. So super cathartic, huge emotional stakes, and they managed to encapsulate this in a very ambient way over all of this action. This is like a 10-minute cue, so this is like a 3 or 4 minute section. So as always, we'll have a full playthrough and then a little bit of a breakdown around how I reconstructed it. So this is Sea Wall by Hans Zimmer and Benjamin Wallfisch. That's a scary lady. So in true Vangelis style, this cue feels completely rubato and no click track in sight. So a lot of manual MIDI placement and zero quantization, which is a good thing really, because it keeps that sense of freedom and free flowing and humanity, which is the whole main theme, right? So the key to this recreation and a massive cheat code is a VST plugin by Cherry Audio called the GX80. It's a really cool, if slightly skeuomorphic rendition, and it looks a little bit like this. So it's this gorgeous recreation of the Yamaha CS80, including its ribbon controller, which unfortunately for this cue, I couldn't really use much of, but still super fun feature. So I said cheat code because most of these presets are designed specifically to mimic the sounds heard in Blade Runner. So other than some EQ, compression and saturation, the patches were pretty much there. So I had to do very little. So that was just a lot of exploring the various patches and just tweaking them slightly to get there. So the main body of this is in the pads, and it's basically gravitated around this C#7 chord, which gives it that amazing catharsis. So it's just a case of finding timbrally compatible patches and just finding out what they were playing by ear, as well as the amazing GX80 plugin. Actually, the stock Logic plugin for the retro synth was also pretty amazing for some of the lead lines. So using them kind of in tandem gave a real sense of thickness that this very muscular cue deserves. A key to the C-wall with all of these violent waves is mimicked really beautifully in the white noise oscillator that's over the top of a lot of these synth patches, itself kind of mimicking the sound of the C, and another example of that kind of interdiegetic sound design convention. For example, on this custom patch that I created in Massive, the white noise oscillator comes into full effect to denote these wave movements. When A/B comparing it to the original cue, needed a little bit more fizz. So as well as a white noise oscillator, there was some bit crusher and various saturations added to that. The bass drone is relatively simple, it stays on that C# for most of it. And then later on, when there's a little bit more emotional grandiosity, then it ramps up to the minor third chord, and then back to the root before those bass hits come in. And that was just largely a simple sine square combination in Massive with lots of saturation and distortion. Onto the lead patches. And this is where we get a bit more recognizable. That is literally just the GX80, very quaint mid-shelf EQ and just lashings of reverb. The patch is even called Lonely Lead, which if that doesn't perfectly sum up Kay's character, I don't know what does. So a lot of the work was already done for me, but it's such a beautiful warm tone for soft synth. There's a doubling in octaves of the higher synth line, both using Massive, just crafting these from scratch because it's quite bedded in the mix and you only really need an allusion to the sharpness of that higher line. So just a simple kind of sawtooth wave with very minor embellishments. Again, with lashings of reverb is all you really need. The higher octave was less kind of sharp and sawtooth-like. So I think I gravitated this one more around the triangle wave. Literally just using velocity for dynamics, no compression. And the stock Logic retro synth plugin really came into its own for a lower octave doubling, which as you can hear, it does have that horn-like quality of the CS80 patches. I think a key to mimicking some of that aftertouch sensibility is done through an envelope controlling the filter parameter so that you have a gradual fading in or opening of that low pass filter and then dying away in quite a natural way. I think the stock Logic plugin does that really well here. So pads and leads together really do give the brunt of what we're hearing here, particularly as there's so much upper and lower frequency extension in the diegetic sound. It really doesn't need much more. That's why I love this cue. It's compositional simplicity, but really just lets the visuals breathe. Those swells then meander in and out of the bass slides, which we'll go through next. pretty meaty. So it's basically just mapping out the MIDI, minor third and root, then the octave down. And then we have this major sixth here, which just in context of this soul theme, which has been very minor sixth to fifth, definitely more in a kind of natural minor with an accidental third, then has this major sixth out of nowhere, and it just gives this incredible grungy attitude, just monstrous. To actually get the timbre of this, then it was massive, a lot of octaves and a fifth harmony, all out of tune with each other, an envelope on the pitch asynchronicity of the three voices, a lot of stereo panning, some phase modulation, some movement between the wavetable, and square and sawtooth bass mainly. But I took inspiration from like a trap bass line where you would put an envelope on a huge but very quick sweep through multiple octaves. You can see 64 semitones up here, which basically traverses 64 semitones in like less than a millisecond, and it gives it like a kick drum, really clicky quality. However, the original was even more clicky, so I gave it a kick drum sample with a big chunky canyon reverb, taking influence from the opening hits, and then just for my own satisfaction added a slightly high-passed reverse kick sample as well, and that gave it the kind of clicky flavor that I was after from the original. Wasn't thick enough, so I had to double it up. That was largely similar in construction, but I noticed that the original bass synth, much like the aftertouch quality of the original patches, it has like a filter opening up, like blooming after it's initially hit, and then it dies away. So I did that through a combination of MIDI automation and enveloping as well. And that growl comes from a combination of a low-pass filter and a scream filter, where the resonance is also opening in that bloom shape. It was also doubled up again with just that sine wave patch from the drone earlier on, which gave it a suitable thickness, but it still needed a little bit of growl. So I channeled both of the main massive instances through a guitar amp simulator with harmonic excitement on it as well. It gave me the closeness to the original that I was after. Then just coming back to the pads, you can hear in this break here, it almost sounds like a mistake on the original track, but it's probably just because it was largely improvised in the way that Vangelis would have done, or at least that's the feeling I get from it. But in this break, you can hear that there is quite a start, what would be quarter note, but it's not to a click. So as close you can get to a quarter note delay from left to right, which we can hear here. And if it wasn't for that break, you wouldn't necessarily hear that delay and you wouldn't necessarily get the thickness. So I'm glad those kind of notes were missed on the original. So I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface of that GX80 Cherry Audio plugin. I think if I'd been maybe recreating the original Blade Runner, it might have come into its own a little bit more, but it was still super satisfying to do this very modern recontextualization and reworking of that score. As always, I'll be posting this up in isolation, just if you wanted to come back and hear the recreation, or just go back and watch the film because it's amazing. So if you have any thoughts for future episodes, future mock-ups, follow my Instagram and we can chat film music there. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ding that bell for notifications. Thank you so much again, and I will catch you in the next one.